Today is August 5th, so I'm going to date this transmission and I'm going to jump right into it today. We often say that we want to grow the business, but too often what we really grow is busyness. More clients, more decisions, more time spent holding things together, but not necessarily the right kind of business. And I have to tell you, I'm in a coaching group right now, and this is the conversation. All of us are there to up level our work, to make sure that we're working with right fit clients at a higher level, which means a higher investment point. But there's some conversation within the group around the fact that some of us need to bring in money right now. And that I think very much relates to what we're talking about today, because we have to have cash flow, but we also want to be careful that we're not just taking on more just to take on more. So we're going to get into that today. It's worth asking, right? Am I building something scalable, or am I building something that's just heavier? And we're unpacking the difference, whether we need to course correct if growth is costing more than it's giving. And it's really important for us as the visionaries to keep an eye on that. Hi, I'm Jen. This is the Founders Table, and more specifically, the Freedom Briefing. That's part of your Founders Table membership. It's part professional development, part support group, and it's really a space for business owners who've done the hard work of building something real and substantial, and now are asking themselves, and we're asking each other, what comes next? If you're quietly feeling like the business has outgrown your time, your energy, or your original role, you're not alone. That's what we're here for. So let's get into today's topic. We talked about the fact that not all growth is good growth, and more revenue does not always mean more freedom. In fact, if growth is only happening because you're doing more, that's a sign you've hit the ceiling of what's sustainable. And this session is all about how to stop scaling stress and start building leverage. In fact, I have an appointment with a prospect later on this week, and a lot of what we'll be talking about, or what they've shared with me in advance of that meeting, is what we've all gone through, right? With the professional services business. We've been doing this for so long, we can do it in our sleep. And what happens is that clients start to ask for us. I only want to work with Jen. They don't want to work with anybody else on our team. And so there's a lot of ways that we can combat that. But if alluding to what the conversation I mentioned before in the coaching group that I'm in, if we're making sacrifices about that, saying, yeah, I'll do that. We need the money. We got to get the money in the door. We have to be aware of what we're creating for ourselves. So to create that awareness with you and for you, I want to talk about 5 signs that you're growing busier, but the business isn't necessarily going stronger. And the first one, to the point that I just made, is that every new client adds weight, not capacity. And what I just mentioned about the prospect that I'm meeting with, about everybody asking to work directly with her, exactly what I'm talking about. Does each sale begin to feel like a strain for you? Or is it more like a system doing its job? And you can feel, just as you say the words, you can feel the difference between those and what that means for your mental health, what it does for the health of the business, and what it does for your bandwidth in particular. The second one is you're more profitable, right? Because if you're still doing all the work, you're not paying somebody else to do it, but you're less present. So multitasking is a myth. None of us can do it. And the more you're trying to do it, the more you're trying to be everything to everyone, the less present you are in every one of those scenarios. So it's something to ask yourself, have I gained revenue, but have I lost breathing room? What's the trade-off there? Number 3, you're still the bridge between departments and decisions. So you have to ask yourself, you have to start to look around Am I the only thing connecting, the only thing holding this business together? It's important for you to realize that, because that's where you become a bottleneck. One of the places you become a bottleneck. Number 4, this is a big one. Delegation feels reactive, not repeatable. Every month we do an executive roundtable, and if you haven't been to one yet, please ask me about it, because they're truly roundtables. It's not a webinar, it's not a panel, there's no pitch, they're small groups, they're usually 8 or less. And one of the things that I notice, because you fill out kind of a prep form so with that we can make it super valuable to you. I want to hear, what's going on with the people that are coming into the room. And one of the gentlemen that responded just noted that he often doesn't plan far enough ahead to allow him to delegate well. So it's a great example of how delegation feels reactive. He gets up to the point, he needs to delegate it to somebody. There's not enough time to expect somebody else to do it or to explain all of the background and context that they would need to carry out the task. So he ends up still doing it himself. So I want you to ask yourself, when you look at delegation within your company, am I delegating tasks or am I building ownership? And then finally, the last one, and I hear this one a lot, you are the engine behind every initiative. So this happened for a client of mine who had a very busy staff. They were about 6 million in income, and in every respect, they looked very successful, and they were. 6 million in revenue is nothing to sneeze at. But the CEO, the owner, was the only one pushing strategic objectives forward because the team was so busy on executing the day-to-day that they didn't have time to pay attention. And so what happened is the CEO would push the initiatives forward, and then he would get busy with what his regular job was as well. And then the projects would fall off the track, and then he would be embarrassed and he would feel all the shame about, letting the team down, or, what it looks like to lead, all these things that he kind of invented for himself. And so you have to just understand or pay attention to what would stall if you stopped pushing it. And we don't always like the answer to that question. So real growth really should not feel like erosion. Yes, there will be seasons, rather, of intensity, of hustle. But if the business can only grow by asking more of you, then it's not built to last. And certainly not a situation that will allow you to sell the business later on, because it still depends too much on you. The goal isn't necessarily more revenue or more work, it's better revenue. And better means building a business that multiplies value without multiplying dependence. Here's your reflection for the week, your field work, if you will. And I want you to ask yourself, what's the most successful thing in your business right now? That still depends entirely on you. That's your leverage point. And please share your answer in the group. It benefits all of us. Growth that frees you is worth chasing. Growth that traps you needs a redesign. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week.